told this season is very good. I haven't seen it yet, but of course I haven't seen any Star Trek. No, that's a lie. I've seen the first 10 episodes of our series and all of the movies because we were required contractually to go to the movies. But I didn't see any reason to watch the show because I had read them all, I had memorized a lot of it, I had shot every scene that I was in, and I thought, I know how they all end. Maybe I'll watch something else. That's what I did. Anyway, if you're watching Picard, as I'm not, I heard the one this week was really good. Well, they've all been good, right? Yeah. And next week, on Thursday, when they drop next week, I believe Brent Spiner is in that episode. What if I sit? Can you still see me?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I see, yeah. There's screens, right?
Yeah.
I look good like this. Yeah. Look like I'm relaxing. Anyway, I hope everyone, I'm so delighted to be here at long last. I've been to Kansas City one other time. I remember it well. I was with everybody that time. Jonathan and LeVar and Gates and Dorn and John Delancey, we were all here together. And I remember Gates saying at the time she loved this town so much she was thinking about buying a house here. So I don't know whether she ever did, but if you see Dr. Crusher here in town somewhere, follow her home. Anyway, you know what? They've got a screen right in front of me that is exactly what you're saying. I'm hypnotized. Wow. So hi, yeah, I'd like to talk to you all. Oh, they changed the shot just so I wouldn't keep looking at myself. Okay. Don't think that's going to prevent me from looking at myself. Oh, so that's what I look like in a wide shot. Yeah. See, this is what happens if I watch Star Trek. That's all I do. I don't pay any attention to the show. I'm just going, yeah, I'm kind of looking okay. I can't believe I got old. But anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions you would like to ask me today. Just a couple areas, if you don't mind, I'd like to stay away from, and that's Star Trek and my personal life. But anything else would be fine. You know, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine worked on a movie with Charles Bronson back in the day, and he was really excited about it. And he said the first day of shooting, the assistant director came over and said, hey, Charlie would like everybody to come to his trailer. He'd like to speak to everybody before we start shooting. So he thought, oh, this is cool. Yeah, he's going to welcome us all on the shoot. So the whole cast and crew gathers outside of Charles Bronson's trailer. And he said, we're waiting. Finally, the door opens up, and Charlie steps out. And he looks out at everybody, and he says, I don't want anyone looking at me. I don't want anyone talking to me. And he goes back in and closes the door. Now, the reason I'm telling you this story, there's no reason I'm telling you this story. I'm just telling you the story. Anyway, I have had this idea, by the way, for another book. Have you read my book? Yeah. Everybody here in Kansas City has read my book, right? How many people here have read it? Okay, 3. So, for the rest of you, I wrote this book. It's called Fan Fiction, and it takes place in the 3rd season of, or 3rd or 4th season of Next Generation. What was my point? Oh yeah, well, so the people who have read my book have said to me, when are you going to write another book? Because they liked it. Let that be a lesson to you all. So I was thinking, you know, I want to write a book, and I was thinking maybe I'll write a book. I've met so many amazing people in my career, and you know, I think fandom, by the way, is sort of a theme of mine, and celebrity and fandom. I've always been interested in that, and I am a fan, and I say that in the book. I'm a huge fan of so many people, and I've rubbed shoulders with so many amazing people in my time. And so anyway, I think that's my next book. It's just going to be stories about people I've met. And like, you could name anybody in show business, anyone famous who's like been alive in my lifetime, and I have met them. Name somebody.
Michael J. Fox.
Who?
Michael J. Fox.
Olivia. Larry, I called him. No, I never met Olivia. I didn't meet John Lennon either, but I did. I lived in New York for many years, and John Lennon, I'd see John and Yoko, they would walk past me, which was thrilling. That's New York, though. You walk past people all the time. I walked past Jackie Kennedy, and I couldn't believe it. And, but the night, there was a night in December where I went down to the Public Theater, which is the New York Shakespeare Festival in New York, and it's downtown Manhattan. I lived uptown. But I went to see a play that was a version of Alice in Wonderland that was directed by a director I'd just worked with there. And he invited me to come see the play. Alice in Wonderland, the star of the show was a musical version. The star of the show was a young actress, I didn't know much about her, Meryl Streep. And she wasn't very good at it, by the way, but she got better, I'm told. But no, yeah. But anyway, I was on my way home in a taxi, and I lived up on 89th Street between Central Park and Columbus, so the cab was going up Central Park, and we passed the Dakota, which was at 72nd in Central Park and West, and there were police cars and lights and sirens and everything. What's going on there? And I got home and turned on the television and found that John Lennon had been shot. And it was just an amazingly creepy feeling and night. And but I'm sorry I never met him. I did meet George Harrison once. He tried to pick up my girlfriend. He really did. We were sitting across from him and on a plane, and the next thing I knew, she had his number, and he had hers, and I was like, what the heck? And I went, well, he's a Beatle, you know. Can't really blame her. Anyway, see, it works just like that. It's like I have known everybody, or I have an attachment to everybody. It's like Kevin Bacon, you know. I mean, do I know Kevin Bacon? I've met Kevin Bacon. I was actually in a restaurant in London with my friend LeVar Burton, and Kevin Bacon came over to the table, and he knew LeVar, and LeVar said, Brent, this is Kevin Bacon. And he reached his hand out, and I said, you know what, I've got a terrible cold. I'm not going to shake your hand. He said, come on, I don't care about stuff like that. You don't care about germs? Anyway, he's a very nice guy. All right, so I'll like fascinate you with more stories about my associations and shoulder rubbing, but in the meantime, what would you like to ask me?
Hello.
Hi.
Recent New York transplant myself. I was on 70th in Central Park.
Right, I remember.
Neighbor. So with the advancement of technology in film and television, has the craft of acting and performing changed much since your early career?
Not really. I mean, you know, because acting is acting. It's always been, the idea has always been, if you're on stage, you just talk a little louder, and if you're on television, you talk softer, and if you're a giant head on a big screen, you just think. And that's kind of the way it is, really. And but you know, the way you go about playing a character, or you know, just acting is acting. It's all done the same way. It's just literally sometimes you're louder than other times, and sometimes you're working with nobody. You know, there's nobody on the other side. I've done so many scenes with myself, which, by the way, I enjoy. Don't get me wrong. One of my favorite actors to work with. But that technology has made that much simpler, where, you know, you just pretend you're there. And I've worked with real actors I do that with, where I just pretend they're there. Right? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, my dear. There's just one side. One. Do you feel gypped? I feel you've been cheated. I'd ask for my money back. I really would. I may ask for my money back. Yeah, hey.
Thank you, Mr. Spiner. You've told us that you know everybody in Hollywood.
Yes.
Is there one or two?
Everyone who's ever been in Hollywood since I've been alive.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Is there one or two people that you love to get up on stage where you feed off each other, like Harvey Korman and Tim Conway used to do on the Carol Burnett show, where you have such chemistry that you can read each other and just have a wonderful time?
Well, I felt kind of that way about Olivier. I try. Sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't. You know what? I mean, most of the people on Star Trek, you know, we've worked together so many years, and we've known each other for so many years, that we're generally pretty comfortable with each other. And there's no getting used to it. You know, people ask, was this strange getting together again and working on Picard after all these years? And I said, really, no. I mean, the only difference was we were wearing costumes, and different costumes, you know. And but I see these people all the time, and so we riff off of each other, and it's really easy. Yeah, I'll tell you a guy I love to work with too, who I feel really comfortable with, is an actor named Saul Rubinek. Do you know who Saul is? Yeah. Saul's out there. Hey, Saul. First time I ever worked with Saul Rubinek, you know, he was Kivas Fajo on The Most Toys, that episode. He was the villain. Remember that?
Yeah.
No? Well, curly-headed guy. Okay. And he was on Frasier. Do you remember that? Yeah. But Saul and I go way back. We did a play in New York, again at the New York Shakespeare Festival, a play called Leave It to Beaver is Dead. That's where we met. And it was an amazing play, really. It was written and directed by a guy named Des McAnuff, who, if you've ever seen the Broadway show Jersey Boys, he created that show, among many others. But Saul and I got to know each other on that show. It was me and Saul and a wonderful Canadian actor named Maury Chaikin, who you've seen in a million things, and Mandy Patinkin and Diane Wiest. And none of us had done anything at that point. I mean, Mandy got Evita while we were doing that show. But yeah, Saul and I, so we've been friends, and he then came and did Star Trek, which was an interesting experience. You probably know this story, but initially it was not Saul in that episode. It was a wonderful actor named David Rappaport, who shot for 2 days, and then the weekend happened, and we came back on Monday only to find that he had taken his life in the park over the weekend. And we had to start over, and there was a Canadian director who was doing that episode, and he said, I know a guy who could probably do this and be here tomorrow. And I said, you know, I think I do too. And it turned out we both had the same person in mind, and it was Saul Rubinek. And he was fantastic. as Kivas Fajo. And then I did a series that was his show, which was Warehouse 13. And he got me that job. He called me and he said, do you want to do like 6 episodes of Warehouse 13? And I said, yeah, I really do. And I met with he said, listen, come meet with the showrunner, head writer, wonderful guy. And I read the first episode and there was like no humor in it at all. He was just a really serious, villainous kind of guy. And I went, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to do this. And I told him that day, I said, I don't know. His name's Jack, and I said, Jack, I'm not sure I can do it. I want to do this. I mean, there's no humor in it at all. And he said, well, that's the character. And he said, you know, I'm not going to talk you into it. And I said, well, I think you're going to have to. And so he did, and I wound up doing it. It was a great joy. Yeah.
Thank you.
What was your question? Oh, never mind. I got it. Hi, everybody over here. Now, maybe it's best you didn't.
Big fan of 80s, because I grew up in the 80s.
80s? I remember the 80s.
And the first thing I ever saw you in, and this is before I knew Star Trek and all that kind of stuff, and I mentioned it to you earlier today, was as Bob Wheeler on Night Court.
I was never on Night Court. Yeah, I was on Night Court.
And, you know, before that time, what other kind of stuff did you do? How did you get into acting? Give us a little bit of the stuff. I wasn't familiar with you before that time.
You kidding?
Sorry.
I must have done 50, 60 movies before that. No. I tell you what, I had been in New York. I went to New York out of college because in my day, that's what you did. If you wanted to be a serious actor, you went to New York, did some theater, and learned how to act. And then if you wanted to make some money, you went to California and tried to do some TV. And that's what I did. And so I had done several shows, done a couple of Broadway shows by then, and several off-Broadway shows. I did a play at the Public Theater called Leave It to Beaver's Dead. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I just recently heard of it, yes.
Yeah. Saul Rubinek was in that. Did you know that? Yeah. But the first job I had in television when I got to LA, you know what I went to LA with? I got a play. I did Little Shop of Horrors. And I went, originally I went into audition for the part of the dentist. And they said, the guy who's doing it now has got to leave in a couple of months, and we're going to use you. You're going to come in and replace the guy who's playing the dentist. And before that happened, I got a phone call. Would you be interested in going to California, into Los Angeles, and instead of playing the dentist, you would play Seymour? And Seymour's the lead. And I said, yeah. And so I went to California. The guy who was originally playing the part, Lee Wilkoff, he created the part. Tremendous act, loved Lee. As a matter of fact, Lee's daughter is my goddaughter.